Loy Machedo speaking from LoyMachedo.com, and it was Loy Machedo. Today, the date is 18th December 2015. Time right now is 6:45 in the evening. Just want to give you the review of Salt, Sugar, and Fat. Okay, this is a book by winner of the Pulitzer Prize, Michael Moss. And, I decided I would read this book because I've always been curious at how is it that especially me and other human beings who really want to succeed in losing weight, why is it that we are so addicted to food? Why is it that every time we can't resist food? What is it in food that makes us crave for it? And apart from that, the main thing that was bothering my mind was the fact that everyone has a unique piece of advice. For example, let's say a fitness enthusiast will say, okay, you need to have cornflakes and milk, while another person says cornflakes and milk is not good for health. One person says, the fast food industry is very poisonous because they kept McDonald's and for 6 years, 11 years, it's not digesting. While on the other hand, people say that if it was so poisonous, why would the government allow it? So finally, after getting fed up of so many people telling me so many things and so many things on the internet, I decided, well, I need to read something by someone who really has his hands, his mind, his heart into research with logical reasoning. So that is where I happened to bump into New York Times bestseller journalist Michael Moss, whose groundbreaking research was apparently put into this book, that is Salt, Sugar, and Fat. And he kind of dug into how these food companies got people addicted to eating their food. In this, what he has done is he has taken interviews with chemists, nutrition scientists, behavioral biologists, food technologists, marketing executives, package designers, chief executives, lobbyists, almost everyone and anyone who are involved in the food industry. And finally, he came out with an ingenious way to present it to the public. Now, what he said is, or what he says in this book is, there are namely three main ingredients, that is salt, sugar, and fat. And it's how these companies play around with these three ingredients in what amounts and what limits is what makes this food addictive. The most important thing what you need to understand is all these foods, when they are mixed together in sizable amounts, they reach a point of pleasure that is called the bliss point. So all of them, what they do is they manipulate these amounts so as to ensure that the neural pathways and neural circuitry which stimulates the brain pleasure centers is hitting the bliss point at such a force, not too strong and not too slow, so that people enjoy and stay in that zone. And that is what makes it so addictive. Because, for example, if something is too sweet, then we like to taste once, twice, and then we don't like to taste it again. But however, if it is in moderation, we like to keep drinking it over and over again. For example, in the case of Coke or Dr. Pepper. Now, here what he does is, he breaks it down. First, he speaks about the impact of sugar, then salt, then fat. Now, sugar, in his own words, as he puts it here, sugar with its high-speed, blunt assault on our brains is the methamphetamine of processed food ingredients. He believes while fat is an opiate, the smooth operator whose effects are less obvious but very powerful, without salt, he observes, processed food companies would cease to exist. Beautifully put. The only drawback that I did find in this book is, even though he didn't mention a lot about salt, sugar, and fat, he kind of didn't actually mention the research of the fact, which is even mentioned in Time magazine, that saturated fat, food that contains fat, is not natural fat, is not bad for health. It is actually sugar. It is actually carbs that is the main culprit. And the reason why carbs are not mentioned is because carbs is a billion-dollar industry, and obviously those people who are funding all the politicians, obviously they wouldn't want to speak against the bread providers. So although he has successfully backed his research with a lot of facts and figures, he has ignored, or rather kind of put all the foods into one category, and just ignored the fact that fat is very important. Salt is also important, although sugar may not be so much. Okay, now there are a couple of points that I thought would be really interesting to mention if in case you just want to know, the main key points of this book, Salt, Sugar and Fat. One is in Finland, okay, where the government is very strong. They managed to put in large labels high in salt, like cigarette warnings. They have put it in almost all the food, and there's been an 80% reduction in heart attacks and strokes in Finland. And the big gulp, that is the 64 Oz soda, the 64, I don't know, what is it, pounds? No, I don't know what do you call that, 64 Oz soda, OZ, whatever. Okay, it contains 41 teaspoons of sugar. That's right. Cereal makers spend twice as much on advertising their ingredients, and apparently those people who are involved in making cereals like Kellogg's, they personally ensure that their family members do not eat them. Now that is something to think about. Cheese, used as food as an appetizer in the US, a dessert in Europe, is now the key ingredient. Why? Because they have tripled their consumption to almost 33 pounds since the 1970s, because the amount of cheese that is there has been stacked up by the US government, and they need to get rid of it, especially because now they are subsidizing cheese to help the milk industry. So that is why they've started advertising cheese as a main ingredient, very healthy for you, and that has increased in obesity in the general public. Now, food processors call their customers users like drug addicts, and that is what they target them to be. Salt is a learned addiction. Newborn children, they wince if you give them salt, but by 6 months they've accepted it because now they've got used to it. So that is why any food that comes out, they give them when children are young. Sugar is obviously the I hate this. Methamphetamine. I need to buy out. Methamphetamine of processed food ingredients. Fact, it is the opiate, and perfectly, they're legal drugs apparently. The Bliss Point is used by all scientists to maximize and find out the exact point of sugar that it has on the bell curve of pleasure centers. It allows food engineers to calculate how much sugar a child blisses out compared to an adult. Apparently, the cheese plague was a result of the Reagan's administration buying up stockpile of excess cheese, which I told you. The government bought it, marketed, and provided. Now it's normal to have cheese in everything, and it's difficult to find any meal without it. Healthy salads also come with cheese. Now, Moss's gift apparently is a phrase, pink slime, that he popularized in the 2009 New York Times article when he when he kind of popularized a series on beef safety that won him the Pulitzer Prize. Pink slime is a hamburger meat extended produced by taking trimmings of the outer part of the cow, once thought which was too fatty, too prone because it was contaminated and better used for making pet food and candles. Now they are used for human consumption. Apparently this gunk is treated with gaseous ammonia to ensure that it is not a habitat for E. coli and other pathogens. It's cheap to produce and easy, but its smell and taste can give you a nauseating effect. So that is why they use chemicals to make it look delicious. Yeah, whatever. It seems food scientists use data from neuroscientists whose MRI scans of test subjects demonstrate how the brain pleasure centers lighten up when you use salt, sugar, and fat in certain ratios. So that is why they find the optimal level. And also, apparently, the book sheds a light on the evil genius and innovative creators of foods like Tang, Alphabet's Jell-O, Instant Pudding, which was Howard Mostowitz, who helped reboot Dr. Pepper, Bob Drain, who created Lunchables, Grab and Grow, and also who can forget the breakfast addiction that is Kellogg's. So, my moment of truth, I kind of felt this was a great book to read and study instead of just taking free advice from anyone and everyone. It kind of gives you like research, it kind of gives you a foundation by which you can actually figure out what is good for you and not good for you, and what are you doing with your body. So, it's pretty shocking to know that there are many athletes who, even though have been training like 6 to 8 hours every single day, end up with diabetes or blood pressure or heart stroke diseases. So I just want to be healthy, and when I die, I want to die quickly. So it's good for me to know something about this industry. So anyway, I give this book a 8.5 out of 10. Only reason for less is because he didn't put the latest research where fat is useful for the body. Well-researched book, and I think you must read it if you want to read. Otherwise, I've given you all the main key points. Loy from LoyMachedo.com endorsing this book, Salt, Sugar and Fact by Michael Moss. Great book to read. Read it, enjoy it, share it with others. And any questions, let me love to hear from you. Goodbye for now.